Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on the approach and theory of language and of learning in the lexical approach. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand what are the theoretical underpinnings of lexical approach. Well, my dear students, Chomsky's influential theory of language emphasized the capacity of speakers to create and to interpret sentences that are unique and have never been produced or heard previously. In contrast to this, the lexical view holds that only a minority of spoken sentences are entirely novel or unique creations, and that multi-word units functioning as what they are called chunks or memorized patterns form a high proportion of the fluent stretches of speech heard in everyday conversation. So mainly the difference that you would find in both the approaches that Chomsky gave and that lexical approach gives is that according to Chomsky, there is a possibility of creating infinite number of unknown, inexperienced sentences that you have never ever experienced before that. Whereas lexical approach believes that there is just a minority of such spoken sentences that are entirely unique or new or novel, and it is mostly the chunks, the phrases, or the combinations of words that are memorized and that are used repeatedly in everyday kind of conversations that people have. The role of collocation is also important in lexically based theories of language. Well, my dear students, what is a collocation? How does it operate? Collocation is a combination of 2 or 3 words that are independent, separate words, each of them in themselves. But when it comes to the usage, generally they are used together. The speech patterns have repetitions of them. I'm going to show you on a full slide how different kinds of collocations are used. Actually, collocations refer to the regular occurrence of these words together. Now, my dear students, if you look at the screen, what you would find is, for example, here are some collocations of verbs and of nouns. Look at the first example, do my hair, or do the cooking, or do the laundry, or do my work. So the use of do with cooking, laundry, work, etc. These are the sets of words that are brought together generally. In the same way, make my bed. So, we don't say do my bed. We generally say make my bed. We don't say do a promise. We say make a promise. Make coffee. Make a meal. So these are collocations where 2 words or 2 sets of words are used together. They are in a, there is a practice in human speech that they are used together. Many other lexical units also occur in language. For example, binomials, for example, clean and tidy, back to front. In the same way, trinomials, where 3 words are brought together when we say about somebody cool, calm, and collected. So, this whole, I would say, phrase is used this way. In the same way, there are certain idioms that are also used where some words are brought together. For example, dead drunk, or to run up a bill. We also have some similes that are used, for example, as old as the hills. So, for example, we do not say as old as the mountaintops. The combination that always is used or that is in practice is as old as the hills. Also, we have connectives, for example, finally, to conclude. We have conversational gambits as well. Example is guess what. So, my dear students, these and other types of lexical units are thought to play a central role in learning and in the process of communication. And actually, learners learn these combinations and they repeatedly use them in their conversations. Studies based on large-scale computer databases, that is the Corpus of Language, or language corpora, that is a plural of that, have examined patterns of phrase and clause sequences as samples. Lexis is also believed to play a central role in language learning, and according to Netringer, who commented, we should base our teaching on the assumption that for a great deal of the time anyway, language production consists of piecing together the ready-made units appropriate for a particular situation. So these collocations, these chunks, these units, smaller lexical units, they are kind of ready-made stuff that any language learner would always have with him or her. And in any new situation, appropriate choices are made out of these. Our teaching, therefore, would center on these patterns and the ways they can be pieced together, along with the ways they vary and the situations in which they occur. So most of the times, the everyday conversations, the everyday language use actually is a practice of using this variety of chunks or this variety of collocations in different situations by making appropriate choices. However, if native speakers have hundreds of thousands of pre-packaged phrases in their lexical inventory, the implications for second language learner are uncertain. Now, this is a crucial question when it comes to the lexical approach, where as a native speaker would have a lot of such, collocations, a lot of such chunks, a lot of such ready-made phrases, all prepared, ready, already existing in their fund of knowledge. When it comes to L2, of course, it becomes questionable. The number that an L2 learner would have would be limited. And the question is how L2 learners would be able to deal with it. It's a daunting task of internalizing the massive inventory of lexical usage. It's very difficult for an L2 learner to learn all these phrases, to learn all these chunks, this ready-made kind of stuff. In this regard, creation suggests that massive input through reading can be provided, and this is the only effective approach. The more the learners would read in L2, the more they would have this kind of collection of, or the fund of these kind of phrases. Others propose that in a language classroom or in a language laboratory, the students, the learners can explore via computer concordance databases the context of lexical use, and by using modern technology, they can learn how in certain situations, certain phrases or collocations can be used. A third approach to learning lexical chunks have been contrastive. Some applied linguists have suggested that for a number of languages, there is an appreciable degree of overlap in the form and meaning of lexical collocations. So by comparing, for example, L2 with L1, the learners can easily learn more such chunks. According to Lewis 2000, the lexical approach has lacked a coherent learning theory and attempts to rectify this with the following assumptions about learning theory in the lexical approach. So according to Lewis, number one, encountering new learning items on several occasions is a necessary but sufficient condition for learning to occur. The process of learning would continue if at every new occasion, in every new situation, new lexical items are learned. Number two, noticing lexical chunks or collocations is a necessary but not sufficient condition for input to become intake. So even if you, for example, are introduced to, you hear, for example, or you read certain kind of chunks or certain kind of these lexical groupings or collocations, that this is not a necessary condition that would work as an intake that you would be able to later on, use these, you would be able to retain these. Thirdly, noticing similarities, differences, restrictions, and examples contributes to turning input into intake, although formal description of rules probably does not help. So, learning the rules, why a particular word is to be combined with another word, these rules may not help. What helps is if you just try to compare and contrast and see the difference of one collocation from the other, and you try to see how there are certain restrictions that are imposed on it and how it is being used. So this helps you retain this input as intake. Fourthly, acquisition is based not on the application of formal rules, but on an accumulation of examples from which learners make provisional generalizations. And language production is the product of previously experienced examples or the previous examples that a user would have come across. Fifthly and finally, according to Lewis, no linear syllabus can adequately reflect the non-linear nature of acquisition. Now, it means that the process of learning this lexis or these lexical items as combinations or collocations or as chunks is not a linear process. It does not happen in a predetermined sequence. They come to you as a learner in a random, shape and form. So a syllabus that is tightly structured or designed to meet this, to provide a linear, learning would not be adequate enough for this non-linear process.